I heard it so often. You're such a loser. Who the heck you think to show up here with your expertise? You are too old, not good enough, not competent enough. Don't even start. You will fail again. And the worst part is that this is the feedback I got so often from my own negative self-talk. So who needs haters when your worst enemy is your own inner voice? According to National Science Foundation, an average person has up to 60,000 thoughts per day. 80% of our thoughts are negative, 95 are repetitive. As Dr. Stuart Eisendrath describes in his book, we have natural need to conceptualize what is happening, organize pieces of information in a plot, in a story that will make sense to us. And even if we don't understand something, even if we don't have full picture, full information, our mind will try to fill in those blanks, those gaps automatically. The way that our mind will fill in those gaps depends a lot on our experience, on our background. The problem is that in moments of stress and uncertainty, we tend to fill in those gaps, those blanks with negative stories and plots. Imagine Teams meeting from your boss saying, "We need to talk." If you have a very stressful day or just bad experience, most probably this very short and vague message will be interpreted in a very negative manner. Oh, what did I mess up? What did I do wrong? Do they want to fire me? At the same time, a negative self-talk is not all bad. Research has shown that it serves us as a protective mechanism, and it helps us to anticipate potential threats, failures, and it motivates us to strive for improvement. However, when negative self-talk becomes uncontrolled, pervasive, it significantly hinders our ability to concentrate and perform at our full potential. So the problem with negative self-talk, when it becomes uncontrolled, chronicle, it leads to anxiety and to depression in a long run. Basically, we get stuck in a loop when negative self-talk creates anxiety. Anxiety leads to depression, and depression tends to interpret events in the negative light. And despite the increasing stress, anxiety, and even depression, it can also distort our perceptions and dilutes our ability to focus on the task that needs to be performed here and now. For example, if you have tried to read a book after a fight with your partner, you might have noticed that it is impossible to focus on the process, to focus on the plot, because your mind is occupied with the inner dialogue of what you have said differently. A psychologist, Ethan Kross, explains in his book that I highly recommend, Chatter, The Voice in Our Head. Our mind has very limited capacity for focus, and inner dialogue significantly interferes with our ability to concentrate on the task that has to be done here and now. Now let's look at 3 strategies that can help you to manage your inner critic. The first approach, I call it emergency pill or a free writing, and which is especially useful when you are feeling overwhelmed with your thoughts in your head. And the idea is pretty simple. Just take a piece of paper or anywhere you like to take your notes and write down everything that you have in mind. Don't think about grammar, language, sentence structure. The idea is just to offload everything that you have on your mind on the paper. You can think of setting a timer, 10 to 15 minutes, for example. After the time is up, you will notice a significant relief. Oh, I have spent quite some time on free writing myself. If you want to take this practice even further, I would suggest to come back to your text, reread it, and try identifying if your story is based on your negative limiting beliefs that are causing you stress or on real facts. Beliefs in this case would usually look like I should, I must, I have to, whereas facts has nothing to do with our own judgment about a particular situation. Another strategy that can help you cope with your negative inner chatter is shifting your attention to a present moment, simply shining the spotlight on any simple activity that you are doing in the present moment. For example, if you are washing your hands, shift your attention on the sensations that you are experiencing when a warm water is touching your skin. Have your full attention on the rising soap bubbles and how they change their shape in the process. If you are preparing a meal, for example, you are chopping vegetables in the kitchen, pay your full attention on the process, how you are chopping those vegetables. If you are eating, concentrate fully on the process, on the way your food tastes, what kind of texture it has, what are the taste nuances, instead of trying to multitask and replying to your emails or watching a show. I can share that I am applying this practice for almost a year now. When I'm eating, I try to avoid watching YouTube or Netflix. And I have to say that I've noticed that my food tastes actually much better than it used to be. Another example, if you are taking a walk, is it indoors or better outdoors? The way you can calm your inner chatter is by focusing entirely on the process. Pay attention on the sensations you have in your feet, in your legs. Pay close attention to the surrounding environment, what sound you notice, lightings, etc. It can be literally any activity that you would usually do automatically without even thinking, but by shining the spotlight on this routine, you are able to turn it into a healthy ritual. The problem with negative self-talk is that we tend to associate ourselves with our thoughts, whereas our thoughts are basically random mental events that very often has nothing to do with reality. For instance, have you ever imagined stealing something from your local grocery store or jump from the cliff? I mean, thinking about it doesn't make you a thief or a suicide. Then why do we think that a thought of I'm not worthy has something to do with ourselves? Dr. Stuart Eisendrath in his book suggests distancing from negative thoughts by reframing them. For instance, instead of thinking I'm not good enough, reframe it into I'm thinking that I'm not good enough. In order to create even further distance, you can reframe it into I'm observing myself thinking that I'm not good enough. And taking it even further, you can reframe it into Laima. You put your name here, observes herself thinking that she is not good enough. Talking with yourself from perspective of she, he, or using your name as I just showed instead of using I is another good technique that help you to decenter yourself from the negative thoughts you have about yourself. With that said, let's look at 3 common mistakes that we do when trying to deal with our negative self-talk. If we expect that we can just stop our mind from generating random negative thoughts, then we will be very disappointed by our limitations. Our minds wander on their own, and us trying to control them makes them wander even more. In fact, the experiments have shown that efforts to suppress thoughts actually intensifies them. It's like trying to extinguish fire with gasoline. Sometimes people worry that dampening their inner critical voice will lower their standards, whereas It works just the other way around. A reasonable level of self-compassion does not lower our standards. Instead, we are not devastated when we are not meeting them. As a consequence, we are more willing to try out new or challenging because we won't see ourselves as a failure or a disaster. And this particular case resonates with me a lot. It has been quite a journey for me to learn how to accept my own body. And I used to be very proud of being very hard on myself, being very strict and demanding, because I thought it helps me to stay disciplined, to stay consistent with my training and my diet. The problem with this motivation that it is driven by hate, not love, and in the long run, it is quite draining to commit for someone who you hate. I'm still in the process moving from self-hate to self-love, to be honest, but I already feel the difference in motivation. I'm remaining consistent in my sports and eating healthy, but the motivation I have now that is coming from love gives me so much energy to continue and to commit to another yoga practice every morning, because this comes from feeling good about yourself, not hating yourself. Finally, if we simply plan to run away from our negative thoughts, avoiding them at any cost and replacing by binge watching or any other mindless entertainment, unfortunately, this is another bad strategy, because avoidance just makes things worse. It's like trying to fix your broken leg with a band-aid. Neuroscience researcher Richard Davidson from University of Wisconsin has found that avoidance techniques activate right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, one of the main areas associated with increased depression and anxiety. Acceptance, on the other hand, activate the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the area that is associated with relief of depression. The same research shows that mindfulness meditations also lead to increased activation of the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. It is not always easy to accept difficult situations and manage our thoughts and feelings that are associated with it. At the same time, acceptance is a first step to recovery, because it is avoidance, suppression, our attempts to destruct ourselves what makes the suffering worse. Let's sum up what we covered. We know that inner self-talk is natural for us as human beings, and our mind is wired to process information in order to create concepts, stories, basically connecting pieces and dots of information. Inner negative self-talk can serve us as a protective mechanism and helps us to predict negative outcomes and threats. The problem occurs when negative self-talk is unmanaged, because it significantly dilutes our ability to concentrate on our goals. It increases level of anxiety, and in the long term, it can lead to depression. We reviewed 3 good strategies for negative self-talk management, which are free writing by offloading all your thoughts on a paper, turning simple daily tasks into mindful rituals, and distancing by reframing thoughts from I feel, I think, to I observe myself thinking, I observe myself feeling. Also, we looked at 3 bad strategies for negative self-talk management, which are suppressing negative thoughts, avoidance, and believing that self-criticism is a good long-term partner in achieving your full potential and performing at your best. Let me know in the comments below what helps you to manage your inner hater. Please consider smashing that like button and subscribing if you find this video useful, or perhaps share it with someone who you think should see it right now. Thank you so much for your attention, for your engagement, and I see you in the next video. Bye.